Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Teaching with Podcasts in the Elementary Classroom. I'm Monica Brady-Meyerov, the founder and CEO of Listenwise, and I'm so excited to share this new collection with you. And I'm joined by a Listenwise Advocate, Jim Bentley, who's a fifth grade teacher. Jim, you want to say hello?
I'm Jim Bentley, and I'm a fifth grade teacher in California. I'm also a national faculty member for the PBL Works. We work on PBL trainings around the world, and had the pleasure to be a National Geographic Fellow and Explorer the last few years. So I get to use these kinds of resources like Listenwise with my students in a variety of contexts.
Excellent. All right, so on the agenda is looking at why we're adding elementary to our collection and looking also at the connection between listening and reading. We're going to go in depth on one of our new elementary lessons, including the quiz, and then we're going to talk briefly about the new Lexile framework for listening, which Listenwise will be the only company to have starting in just a few weeks. So first of all, if you're not familiar with Listenwise, we are an award-winning listening skills building platform with more than 2,000 podcasts that now has content for grades 2 through 12. We make curriculum connections with the audio in English language arts, social studies, and science. And we've got all the teaching resources, scaffolds, and supports, quizzes, and comprehension questions that you could need to open up Listenwise and run a lesson off an excellent audio story tomorrow. We do have a free version for teachers, so you're able to access much of the audio content for free. And then we have a premium subscription for schools and districts. Let's jump right into why are we going into elementary? Well, I started Listenwise when my daughter was a struggling reader and she was in the third grade. And at that time, about 6 years ago, there really weren't enough good audio sources for younger students. So we began Listenwise geared toward middle and high school students, but we heard from many of you asking, wanting audio for younger students. And there's a good reason for that. Because as you know, the NAEP reading scores have been stagnant for decades. They dropped 2 percentage points for fourth grade from 2017 to 2018. So the students who are struggling the most in reading are where they were almost 30 years ago. Now, we believe that listening is the missing link in this literacy puzzle. And that's where we come in with this collection because students are being tested on listening in high stakes assessments. 22 states start testing listening in the third grade. And we know that you need help to prepare your students. And we also believe that a collection for younger learners will help with lower level audio, English language speakers. So, one of the reasons that I cite here too is teacher demand. And one of those teachers is Jim, who for years has been asking us to create an elementary curriculum. So, Jim, why do you think it's necessary?
Anymore, media involves seeing video, it involves text, it involves so many different varieties of inputs, and audio is something that if it's not explicitly taught, students don't just naturally gravitate and pick it up. So it's really, really important to call it out, to have strategies, and really emphasize the fact that listening is more than just hearing. It's understanding, it's reframing, it has to be called out specifically. So I really appreciate this platform in helping me do that. I don't have those resources with the other materials that my district has purchased or that I'm looking for on the web.
And as this graphic indicates, listening is foundational to learning. Listening comprehension is a major driver behind reading comprehension, and audio content can help close the content understanding gap because students can understand 2 to 3 grade levels higher when listening than when reading. So it can expose students to vocabulary and content that's above their reading level, which we know in the lower grades is so important. And this is also important for your ELs. So research shows that listening comprehension and reading comprehension are correlated through the 8th grade. And it also shows that students can comprehend more through listening than through reading. So all great reasons as to why we're adding audio for the lower grades. So reading also helps build your students' background knowledge, develop vocabulary, and reinforces the relationship between spoken and written language. We have sourced new and exciting audio from podcasts geared toward children for this new collection. So if you're a podcast listener like I am, you know that typically a podcast is 20 minutes long. We have edited these to make them 3 to 5 minutes in length so that you have time to teach around the audio. And we've selected podcasts that are aligned to the curriculum and age appropriate. So this is a highly valuable curriculum. It's curated, it's edited, we've done the prep for the teachers, and you'll see why in a minute. It is classroom ready. And Jim, I know you've listened to some of the audio with your students. I'd love to hear what your students thought of the audio.
They absolutely loved being able to listen to a story, and they loved to be able to hear the sounds and the people and the topics. I mean, the content's rich. It's storytelling. It's something that's been going on for thousands of years as humans, and now we get to hear it through headphones and a device. It's magical. They love it.
Great. Well, in this collection, it'll be similar to our middle and high school collection in that it is all nonfiction. So this can help you bridge the gap between narrative storytelling and content. So nonfiction, it's all nonfiction. It's possible we'll add some fiction in the future. We're exploring that option. But for now, these resources follow the same curriculum collections we have for middle and high school students, teachers. There'll be English language arts stories, social studies stories, and science stories. We'll also be posting 2 weekly current events, and we launch a week from today with the beta collection of 20 lessons. But because you are listening to this webinar, we're going to be sending follow-up emails with the 4 lessons that are already active on our site so you can get started right away. In the fall, we expect to have a full launch of a full collection, but we're not waiting to release everything until the fall. Just know that we will be building this collection on a weekly basis until we reach a full launch in this fall. So let's go now to one of the stories, Bird Mystery. And I'm just going to pop over to the web so that you can hear what this sounds like and hear the excitement that Jim was talking about, that his students really enjoyed. This comes from a podcast called Earth Rangers, and it's got an exciting voice actor and a lot of great sound effects. So listen to that.
Let me set the scene. It was a Tuesday morning. I had just finished my daily kung fu routine when I went outside to fill my bird feeder. I've got a ton of feathered friends who frequent my yard, and they get a little grumpy if I forget their breakfast.
So as you can see, it has the transcript in line with the audio, as do all of our resources on Listenwise, and that's especially important when you're dealing with pre-readers. You also have the ability to slow down the audio. And then the assignment resources present a bank of listening comprehension questions that are geared toward elementary students, as well as vocabulary we believe they'll find challenging that you can help set up for success before the listening, and some listening organizers. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jim, because didn't you use this lesson with your students? Tell me how you used it and what the reaction was.
Yes, we did use this. In fact, it was a really nice compliment to a story that we were reading out of Explorer magazine about Darwin and finches. So your reading complemented by audio is fantastic. When we set this up, the teacher directions are so nice because they give you suggestions for things to discuss, questions to ask prior to actually launching the story with prior to listening. I found that the framing and the questions, the setup was really quite nice. It was logical, it made sense, and it also helped me, a teacher who's somewhat inexperienced at actually teaching listening skills, to do this. And I feel more comfortable the more I use this. We took a look at some of the vocab. The vocabulary is kind of nice to call out explicitly. And as we looking through the words and kind of shedding some light on these, as the idiom shed some light, you see there, it's really nice for me to be able to work with my EL students. My students have several of those. My students who are struggling students, maybe a little bit more literal thinkers for fifth graders, to be able to define these in context, to give some examples, and then to ask questions that would relate to it. So like, what's something you could shed light on? The listening organizer that we used for this was the language identification organizer. This was a really nice preview of the phrases that they were going to hear throughout the course of the story. And what they can do is check them off as they're going. I also realized too that the identification organizer is a nice way to summarize some of what you heard at the end. So students can actually use those phrases if they wanted to write some sentences that would help explain. When it came to listening, typically I'll start off whole class with the first couple stories of the year, but by this time of the year I had several students who were able to do this on their own. They were able to use the listening identification guide. They also realized too that there would be some questions, some comprehension questions that would go along with this. Those questions help them kind of focus in on what they need to listen to, what they probably wanted to try and understand as it went along.
And
I
Jim,
would also pull, oh yeah, go ahead.
did you use the create assignment button? Sorry, Jim, did you, hold on, I'm gonna just back that up because I think we can
Yep,
edit that. And Jim,
yep.
did you use the create assignment tool to with your students?
Absolutely, and that's the power of this, is that you can have students doing this individually or on their own. So when I'm filling in the name of this assignment, I'll definitely want to make sure I know what it is. I do allow students to see transcript. I love to see that. I do love to choose listening organizers. Like I said, the listening language identification one was helpful. The question answer, the T-chart, is also a wonderful one that you're showing on screen. As students are listening and have questions, they can either respond to answers that they get, or I'll ask them to listen to questions that were asked and then provide answers that were given. So either way, they're interacting with it. It's not passive. And I think that's the most important part I would want to get across. With the assignment feature, we have questions that students can respond to in order to show their comprehension. I love that we can add questions as well to tailor maybe specifically to what we're doing. So if I wanted to go back to Darwin and finches, I can maybe go with that. They're usually, though, really just ready to plug and play. I love the questions as they come standard. Once I click save and go to next, I have the opportunity to select my materials. I love to pair the audio with something visual. So like you just selected the NASA radar one. That's a great map that shows birds basically taking flight at night, and it's shown with weather radar pieces. And also the video, I love that video, the bird migration. It's a TED Ed video. So audio, visual, video. I love to give some instructions, some basic uh, teacher instructions to my students written in my own voice so that they're familiar with it. I love the story synopsis that you offer too. It's a really quick, age-appropriate look at the story, which then takes it off of me from having to summarize and write. So it's already ready for me to go. When I click save, I select the due date, when I want it to be due by, and also which class I want it to be, and it's super easy. And like you're doing, I can assign it to some students or all students. So it's very simple for me to do. It's not a task at all.
Yeah, and I'm just going to show you what it looks like to this student because I do, thanks Jim for pointing out what we call the student synopsis. So this is different than what you read about this story as a teacher. This is written for your students to understand and get them excited about this story. But this is what your elementary student would see to complete the lesson. Well, thanks for that, Jim. Let me jump back to the webinar and just go over a few other key points I want to make about this new collection. First is about the types of organizers. So we showed you the language identification and the T-chart, but we also have closed sentences and true false. Every single story will have a language identification organizer because we know that's a great way to help students track their listening. And then as we heard from Jim, lots of different ways to use this in your class, whole group, model group, maybe you have listening stations. In the earlier grades, we heard from teachers, this is an important part of instruction, and we want to help with that. Or it could be one-to-one. The other really exciting thing about this collection is that all of the lesson resources will have quizzes. We know how much you love our listening quizzes, so we've made an effort to put one on every single lesson. This is the only online auto-scored listening quiz currently available so that it helps your students practice for the high-stakes tests where they are assessed on listening. Students can take the quizzes about selected stories to just practice their listening or prepare for a discussion in class. And each assesses 4 different strands of listening. They assess identifying the main idea, understanding vocabulary and context, recognizing literal meaning, and making inferences. And at the end of the quiz, students see their scores, and teachers can quickly assess how they're doing. So here's what a main idea question looks like. We're trying to use vocabulary in the creation of the quiz that is also age appropriate. The students all get immediate feedback. We know that this is a research-based approach to motivating students, letting them know right away how they did. And you can reset the quiz and they can take it again. And then you have the ability to track their progress on your quiz dashboard. So all of these features, which are available in our middle and high school collection too, carry over into this new elementary collection. What's also new for all of our stories coming soon is the new Lexile audio measure. So we're going to be introducing the Lexile listening framework with metametrics in just a few weeks. And these measures will go onto all of our audio stories, including our elementary collection. So they will get a Lexile Lexile audio measure for every piece of audio. What this will help you do is optimize student growth by matching students to audio content at their listening level. We are in development for the Lexile listening student measure that's due next fall. We believe what that will do is be able to match the student with the right audio measures. But Jim and I were just talking about how important it is already to just at least look at the audio level as a standalone and help you determine what you should use for your students. Jim, how do you think you'll be using that?
This is really going to help me figure out what types of audio pieces to match with different types of students. It doesn't make sense to give a student who's working at a 570 Lexile because of language abilities or learning difficulties, something that's way above their level. So I really appreciate the fact that I can tailor this quickly, easily, without a lot of effort on my part. It's already done for me.
Great. Well, I'd like to wrap up the webinar by inviting you to pilot elementary until the end of this school year. We have a limited number of pilots available for this collection, and we would be delighted to have you learn more and engage with us about how you can use this new collection in your school. What you need to do is email me. There's my email address or my phone number. And if you are attending this webinar live, we will be giving away one free teacher subscription for the rest of the year. We're going to be sending out that winner the information by email and letting you know. So we are recording this webinar, so you will be able to share it with your colleagues and administrators, and we would welcome any questions as well at monica@listenwise.com. I am so excited about this. It's been years in the making, and Jim, I want to thank you for all your advocacy for it and for participating today and sharing your enthusiasm.
Thank you, Monica. It's a pleasure to be here. I love this platform. It makes a big difference with my students.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.